Welcome to Catholic Feedback. I'm your host, Keith Nestor. On this podcast, we connect the eternal truths of the Catholic faith with everyday life. Send in your questions and comments to feedback@catholicfeedback.com. This podcast is brought to you by Down to Earth Ministry, a ministry of stewardship, a mission of faith, and by the generous support of our patrons. For more information, please visit downtoearthministry.org. That's down, the number 2, earthministry.org. Let's get to it. Well, friends, I'm very excited today for a couple reasons to talk to you guys all about Our Lady of Guadalupe, and just because this is a guest I've wanted to talk to for a long time, and now I have an opportunity to, because he's going to share with us his experience with Our Lady of Guadalupe. We're going to be talking with Gabe Castillo today. Gabe is a person who is in full-time youth ministry in Houston, Texas. He's got an incredible YouTube channel called GabiAfterHours. Before you do anything, just pause this video, click on the link in the description, make sure you subscribe to his channel. He does things that other people just don't do, and I found him to be incredibly helpful. And when I reached out to him today to talk about Our Lady of Guadalupe, the reason was because I'm going to be leading a pilgrimage to Guadalupe in January, and I'm just trying to learn more about this and share some of these things with you so that maybe your mind might get turned on to this idea. I'd love to have you come with me. And Gabe just got back from a pilgrimage there, so I thought he would be an awesome person to help us learn more about Our Lady of Guadalupe, and just a guy that you need to get to know here if you're in my channel and you haven't figured out who he is yet. So please welcome Gabe. Gabe, how are you doing, my brother?
I'm doing very well, Keith. It's an honor to be on your program. I've been following you. I've been watching your conversion, and you're doing wonderful work. So thank you so much for serving our Lord through social media.
Thank you so much. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are and how you got started doing what you're doing and doing what you're doing in youth ministry.
Yes, so I'm first and foremost a husband and a father. I've got 4 children. My oldest boy is 13, and my youngest girl is about 1 year and a month. I work full-time in youth ministry, not by choice. I was doing evangelization, and then my pastor asked, are you willing to work with young people? And through my work with young people, and of course, if you want to reach young people, they spend the majority of their time, for better or for worse, on the internet. And then that led me to start making YouTube videos. But the goal of my channel is first and foremost like holiness of life. And we very much model the philosophy of Maximilian Kolbe to do the best quality, the best production, spare no expense within reason, at the service of the gospel, and to bring souls to Jesus Christ in the fastest, most effective way possible, which is the Virgin Mary. So my channel has a very strong Marian bent. And so when you asked me to be on your channel and to talk about Our Lady of Guadalupe, instantaneously, it's always going to be an automatic yes, especially because the apparitions of Our Lady of Guadalupe kind of kicked off the Marian era. And she's kind of like the easiest introduction to Mariology, especially as we get closer and closer to today. If you're looking at the history of Marian apparitions, the messages get harder and harder, and what she's asking us in prayer and penance and rosaries and all these things, and first Saturdays and all this stuff, the closer we get to our time is harder. So it's very good to start with an introduction to Our Lady of Guadalupe.
I agree with you 100%. When I was writing my book about what it's like to be a new Catholic, that was one of the ways, I have a chapter called The Mary Stuff, which is about how converts should learn to cultivate this devotion to the Blessed Mother. And I feel like learning about apparitions is a great place to begin.
Yeah.
I don't think the apparitions are for like the advanced Catholics. I think that when I look in history and when I look at what she has done in these apparitions, a lot of them I feel like are evangelistic. Yes. And can help people come into the faith. So I do recommend learning about Our Lady of Guadalupe. So I just share a little bit about that. But I was wondering if you could give us kind of a rundown on what is the history and the experience of Our Lady of Guadalupe for those that don't really know a lot about it.
So I'll start off by saying I did not know a lot about it other than the basics, except for like 2 or 3 months ago, a friend of mine who is a religious studying to become a priest at the St. Michael's Abbey in Orange County, California, came to me, and he has a break every so often. And when he comes, he asks, hey, can we make a YouTube video? Because he prays a lot and he wants to get out there his message. And he said, I want to make a video about Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I was kind of like, okay, I guess. I kind of like more intense stuff. And we decided that we would go to Mexico because I was shocked at how cheap tickets were. It was only like $300 to get a ticket to Mexico, round trip. So he did all of this research. So everything I'm saying to you, if you've never heard it before, don't feel bad because I also didn't hear about it. And we will be making a documentary. So 100%, you need to go with Keith on this pilgrimage, and hopefully we'll convince you to do that if you can't go with him, to go on your own. But also I will be putting together a high quality production documentary that maybe we'll talk about in a little bit. So some of this information, that's the only reason I know it. So it's not like I'm an expert on this topic. So it's very important to learn the context in which Our Lady of Guadalupe enters the scene, because it was a very bleak situation. So the apparition took place in 1531. It's important to note that in 1517 is when the Protestant Revolution got kicked off. And so you have in Europe a major split in the church, the beginning of splits that we're still feeling the effects of today, where millions of Catholics are leaving the church following Martin Luther and the various reformers. And at the same time, in the New World where we're currently at today, I'm in Texas, here, the Aztecs especially were involved in human sacrifice. The Spanish under Hernan Cortez were coming here, encountering this culture. And although we like to think of ourselves as the Spanish coming here to the New World as very cultured and very civilized, there was forceful influence of Spanish culture on the Aztecs. So at the time, you have an Aztec culture that is committing human sacrifice on a regular basis. They're worshiping false gods, which the Old Testament tells us are, the pagans are, the gods of the pagans are demons or devils. And so they are in ritualistic sacrifice. Very important to know that. The Spanish come in the same time period, around the early 1500s, late 1400s. They are taking the gold. They're trying to forcefully get them to stop this pagan religion. And so the Aztecs at the time are not open to conversion because the Spaniards are bringing with them illnesses and all sorts of other issues. They see this as like a bad omen and a punishment from their gods. So that's kind of the circumstance. The Franciscans and a couple of Dominicans that are coming with the Spanish, trying to influence the spirituality of the Aztecs, are not having very much fruit, mostly because these Aztecs are very distrustful of the Spaniards based on their behavior, based on them trying to take away their own culture. The Franciscans are very open and trying to enculturate the Aztecs, trying to get them to be familiar, using their language, using their imagery, but they're having very, very little success. So it's kind of like a huge, I would say, failure as far as evangelization is going. And so this is the context in which the Virgin Mary chooses to make herself known. And in our own theology, we say that Mary's the spouse of the Holy Spirit. She's the star of new evangelization. She's all these wonderful things. And in this apparition, we get to see that played out. So we should be very attentive how she chooses to convert these, what we would consider from all, observances to be wild, animalistic, pagan, evil, murderous peoples. How she converts them brings them to the fullness of the Catholic faith. It's very important how she does this. So a newly converted Indian, now he's involved in the Catholic faith. He's going to catechism classes. He was baptized. He was married into the Catholic Church. He's a widower. He's in his early 50s. He's going on his way to go to Mass. He's walking by this hill called Tepeyac Hill. He hears beautiful music and beautiful songbirds to where he's questioning, wow, is this the culture? Is this the heaven that my previous religion? So it's already kind of confused on what this apparition is. Is this the heaven of my previous religion, the land of my ancestors? And then he hears a heavenly voice saying, Juan Diego, but she's saying it in the endearing term like Dieguito or my little Juanito, my little baby boy. Come, come. And so he goes up to the hill. At the top of Tepeyac Hill, the Virgin Mary announces herself that she is the Holy Virgin Mary. So immediately, although she's snaring him in with the culture that he's used to, with beautiful heavenly music that he thinks is his native culture, she tells him, I am the Mother of God. I am the Holy Virgin Mary. And I want to give you a message that you need to take to your bishop. I want a temple to be built here so that they can worship the one true God. And in a moment, when we talk about why you should go to Guadalupe, why you should make a pilgrimage, and I'll pause and say there are a lot of stereotypes about going into Mexico. There are some fears that are legitimate and some fears that are illegitimate. But why does Our Lady still want us to go there? Why did she make this a place of pilgrimage? We'll get into that in a moment. But she tells Juan Diego to go to the bishop, ask him to have a temple built here for these various reasons, which we'll get into in a moment. The bishop, of course, any reasonable man, if you come in and you say, hey, I had a vision of the Virgin Mary, she wants a church built, the first thing we're going to do is blow you off because you sound like a lunatic. You sound like you're overzealous. Note to people who have visions and voices that don't act crazy when we don't believe you. So the bishop says, okay, great. Come back and visit me another time. That same day, Juan goes back to the Tepeyac Hill and the Virgin Mary appears to him again. And this is a very important note. All along the way, there's going to be messages that are relevant to us today. Juan Diego says, he did not believe me. Please, my queen, my little mother, my little woman, please, I beg of you, choose somebody else. Choose somebody who's more worthy. Choose somebody who's more influential. Very important, because this kind of echoes in our own hearts when we feel like we're not good enough. We feel like we're unworthy. And Our Lady says, no, I can choose anybody I want. There's many people who serve me. There's many people who are smarter. There's many people who are more influential. But I have chosen you for my own good purposes. And it is you who must carry out this task. Go back to the bishop. And so he goes back to the bishop. The bishop asks for a sign. And then the third, the Virgin Mary appears to Juan within a 4-day period on 4 occasions. One of those times it was on the same day, the first apparitions. So he goes back. The bishop says, hey, okay, fine. I hear what you're saying, but you have to understand, I need proof. He's not that he's hard-hearted. Some people try to portray the bishop as a hard-hearted, clerical maniac. No, you need proof that this is really the Mother of God. You can't just accept the man's word for it. So the Virgin Mary tells Juan Diego, come back tomorrow. I will give you the proof that you are seeking. Juan Diego, and I used to look down upon him because the Virgin Mary said to come back. Juan Diego's uncle was sick, so he wanted to go get a priest for his uncle, and he wanted to avoid the Virgin Mary. So he goes out of his way on December 12th. He goes out of his way. The Virgin Mary says, come back, you come back. I don't care how sick your uncle is or he's dying. So note to self, the Virgin Mary appears to you. You should do what she says. So he goes out of his way to avoid the Virgin Mary. So he's not on top of the hill. There's a church on top of that hill if you go visit there today. He's not on top of the hill. Instead, the Virgin Mary cuts him off. You can't hide from the Virgin Mary. Nope. And the Virgin Mary cuts him off, says, go to the top of the hill. At the top of the hill, you will find beautiful roses. Again, this is December. This is a very mountainous region. These are Castilian roses, which would be familiar to the bishop, Zumárraga, who's from Spain. And so Juan Diego goes to the top. He collects all of these beautiful wild roses, puts him in the tilma. We'll talk about the significance, why it's so important that the Virgin Mary makes this in a tilma. He brings the tilma full of the roses to the Virgin Mary at the bottom of the hill. She arranges them in the tilma, and she says to him, it's very important, you do not show anybody what's in here. When you get to the bishop, open your tilma and allow the roses to fall to the ground. So after this happens, of course, Juan Diego goes to the bishop. He releases his tilma. All of the Castilian roses fall to the ground. But even more importantly, on this tilma, which is made out of agave cactus, there is a luminous, beautiful image, an image that appeared to be lifelike at the time of the bishop. The bishop sees this image, falls to the ground. Immediately, and this is so important, he immediately recognizes that this is the Virgin Mary. She's standing on the sun. She's standing on the moon. She's clothed with the sun. And immediately he recognizes this is a virgin, this is a miracle. He's going to build a little chapel at first where the tilma is going to be shown without any glass, without any protection, in this region which has salty air with candles and people coming and touching it and all this miraculous image. So it's very important that we recognize immediately that this is an image recognized by the Spaniards, but at the same time, and most importantly, this is recognized by the Aztecs to have extreme religious symbolisms built into this image, which their culture would recognize immediately. Like we can look at a book and read a book, they would look at an image and read an image. And so for the Aztecs, this image was so profound. Like, yeah, it was great. It's great for us Catholics. We look at it, we're like, wow, it's Mary. But for the Aztecs, in a certain culture, in a certain region, going through a certain circumstance, they looked at this. And within 10 years, there were 10 million baptisms. Wow. So we might have lost 1 million Catholics in Europe through our own failings, through heresy, through all these things. But the Virgin Mary, the queen of all evangelization, tenfold brings Catholics into the church and still uses this image today. So actually, there's 3 codes written into this image, and we will get into those 3 codes. One is a code written for the Aztecs. It was so powerful that they were able and willing to change their lives. 2, this was a code for Catholics that we could read into this. The woman clothed with the sun. There's also some allusions to Islam because she's standing on a crescent moon. This was the image that Don John of Austria put up and carried as his banner in the Battle of Lepanto. Our Lady Fatima, Our Lady of Victory, all of this is all tied together. But the third message is relevant for us today because Our Lady had hidden in the tilma scientific messages that only modern man would be able to discover. So was it relevant then? Yes. Is it relevant to the Spanish? Yes. Is it relevant to us today? Even more than we realize. And especially in a culture that is so atheistic and agnostic and almost allergic or repulsed by religion, the message, the scientific miracles point to the verbal message that she gave to Juan Diego, and she gave 2 messages, primarily one concerning the Basilica and making a pilgrimage to Our Lady of Guadalupe, and the other concerning our relationship to her and to God. Before we go on into the tilma and all the miracle signs, is there anything that you wanted to ask or add, Keith?
Oh, there's just so much there. I mean, for me, as a guy who was a Protestant for so many years and became Catholic, we often can look at what happened in the Reformation. When you're a Protestant, you look at that as the most glorious thing that God's ever done. Mm-hmm. You know, aside from raising Jesus from the dead. You're like, oh, finally, we're freedom. Free from all of this goofy Catholic stuff, right? But when you look at what happens from the Reformation began in a very localized area in the West. It wasn't a worldwide phenomenon. Yes. And when you see the Blessed Virgin Mary coming to a completely different part of the world, and you made the point, and I've heard that said in other places too, about how many people left the church through the Reformation at that time versus how many came in through what took place there in Mexico. It's not even close. And to me, that is just so powerful to say, you alluded to this about whatever she tells you to do, we're going to do it. I also think too, there's a lesson for us from the standpoint of if we turn our backs on God, we run the risk of removing ourselves from his revelation to us, but that doesn't mean that his revelation stops. He simply moves on somewhere else. And I don't know about you, Gabe, I want to be right in the center of that. I don't want to be on the outside looking in going, oh, look at that great stuff God's doing over there. And we're invited into that. And I think that when she appears here, it's an invitation not just to Juan Diego, but to the whole world to see who she is and what her message is. So there's so many things there that relate to me. And I look at that and I think ultimately, I think about the image itself, standing on the moon, clothed in the sun. This is Revelation chapter 12. This is the coronation of the Blessed Virgin Mary as Queen of Heaven and Earth. And I see that and I think to myself, God wins.
Yes.
Even when it looks like God doesn't win because, the church gets shattered in the Reformation, to a certain extent in Europe, God's not done. God isn't up there going, oh, what are we going to do now? He's got a plan. He's always got a plan. And typically, it's going to involve his Blessed Mother to a very, very significant factor, because that's her job as the Queen Mother of heaven and earth. Her job is to continue to bring Jesus to us. I could preach all day on this, but
amen.
But,
I could listen to it.
Well, you can too, but I want to hear. So here's the thing. You're listening to this. If you don't know a lot about Our Lady of Guadalupe, and you could kind of think to yourself, well, this sounds great, but is it really true? Is this just some goofy legend that some people made up? I mean, we've seen the image of the tilma. It's kind of a familiar image in our culture. We associate it with Mexico. But how do we know this isn't just something that was made up by somebody to try to convert a bunch of simple-minded natives because people were upset about what was going on in Europe? So now we have to go somewhere else where we can control them.
Yes, awesome. So then that brings us to the proof is in the pudding, so to speak, right?
Amen.
And so we'll start with the Aztecs. How did this convert them? In ways that we couldn't have even imagined. And it didn't just convert the dumb Aztecs, like the lowly people, the lowly class. It converted the Aztec priests who had incentive not to convert because they were Aztec priests. And in a lot of ways that mirrors sometimes when you're a pastor in a Protestant church, you have incentive not to convert. You're the most educated, but at the same time, your congregation helps to feed your family. And so the Aztec priests would be the last ones who would want to convert, and they're the most educated in their own culture. So the very fact that this image happened on a tilma. So in the Aztec culture, the tilma was very important. That's how they would carry their food. That's how they would carry their babies. Also, this tilma was made out of agave cactus, as I briefly mentioned. This would only last about 60 years before it would begin to deteriorate. On top of that, the tilma that we have to this very day has lasted over 500 years. In the 1920s, when Mexico was under the Freemasons and it was very anti-Catholic culture, they tried to blow up the tilma. And the tilma wasn't under like bulletproof glass or anything. It was a very simple glass. And there was a bomb that exploded right near the altar. And it was so powerful that the altar candle, I have pictures of it, and you can see this if you go and visit the tilma today at the Basilica in Mexico City. The altar candle is melted backwards and twisted by the power of this explosion, and yet it did not damage the tilma. In the 1700s, somebody dropped acid on the tilma because they were doing experiments on it, and the tilma started to burn away, and then the acid in the tilma receded, and the tilma began to heal itself. So all of this, just the very fact that it is on this garment is symbolic, but then the image itself. So the skin color of the woman wasn't the white skin of the Europeans, and it wasn't the dark burnt skin of the Aztecs. It was the mixed skin that would be the result of the offspring of a Spanish and an Aztec woman. And still, too, there's an iridescence to the skin that under some angles she looks whiter, other some angles she looks browner. But this says to the people that I have come to unite both races in one single person. The way that she has, keep looking at the image. The pigment itself that is used on the image is unknown on Earth. They have no idea what minerals, what elements, what makes up this pigment. On top of that, the pigments, the dye, whatever it is that is used to make this heavenly image floats just millimeters above the actual tilma itself. So there's a very fine layer of it's just hovering above. The image isn't painted with brush strokes. So if somebody were to make a replica, and people have tried to paint replicas on the same type of material, and it's just impossible to do because of all the fine details. But even that, when they have tried, it takes hundreds and thousands and millions of strokes on a canvas in order to make an image. Whereas this was laid down in one large single stroke, which is unbelievable and unfathomable how that's been done. Also, the temperature of the tilma, the temperature of the image is 98.6 degrees. One of the comments that my friend, when we went to go and film in Mexico City, he kept saying to me, he obviously had some sort of supernatural spiritual experience. He kept repeating to me with tears in his eyes, he said, she's alive, she's alive, she's alive in that image. And that's the human body temperature, 98.6 degrees. So just the very image itself has extraordinary qualities. Is there something you want to add to this? Or
Well, I just want to say, like, and I mean, this may be obvious to people, but maybe not. But like this image that we're talking about, it's over 500 years old, and we're going to see it. Like, it's not one of those things where you go, oh, this happened, but we lost it in history. We don't know where it is. No, we are actually going to physically be standing in front of this tilma. So if anyone says, well, this didn't really happen, this is a legend. No, like, we're going to be there. It still exists. So that might be obvious to people, but I think for some people, they might think, oh, we just have like an artist rendition of what it kind of looked like or may have looked like. Because sometimes people see different versions of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I think that there are people that take license and try to recreate a little bit. But no, the actual tilma itself is what we're going to see.
That's right.
Which is what you're talking about, those miracles.
This is the most visited place on earth. So it has more visitors than Lourdes. It has more visitors than the Vatican. It has more visitors in the Basilica at Fatima, more visitors than any other place on earth. There are over 20 million pilgrims who with their own eyes every single year look upon this tilma. And a Mexican told me, and of course he's biased, but he says the Virgin Mary visits many other places around the world, but she lives in Mexico City. And to a certain degree, he's got a point, because one, this image is painted in heaven, but two, this image has a lot of lifelike qualities, which we'll get into in a moment. So for the Aztecs, when they see this woman, the first thing that they notice, well, there's a lot of things they notice, but her hair is parted and is down the way that virgin women would wear their hair in that culture. They worship the sun and they worship the moon. These are their false gods. This woman is standing in front of the sun, so as to say that she's more powerful than their sun god. Their serpent god or their moon god, she's standing on, meaning she's more powerful than their moon god, but at the same time, she has her hands in prayer and she has her eyes looking down as if she's in the presence of a more powerful presence. And more importantly, all over her garment are little symbols. There's stars all over the garment. The stars have 8 points. This is very meaningful to them. But most importantly, over her womb is called the quinquix flower, which for them represents the fullness of power, the fullness of life, the fullness of divinity, completion in all of its most perfect forms. So we have this woman who's all powerful, who's wearing a black band around her tummy, which means that she's pregnant. So we have a pregnant virgin. This is what the Aztecs are reading. A pregnant virgin who's more powerful than the sun god, more powerful than the moon god. And in her womb is the fullness of all creation, is the fullness of all divinity, is the creator of heaven and earth, is the climax. It's like reading in our Judeo-Christian theology 777 or 333, all this perfect number, these perfect numbers. So perfection, the source of all life, the center of the universe, is at her womb. Very, very important. Also, when I mentioned that Juan Diego avoided seeing the Virgin Mary, wanted to avoid her because his uncle was sick and dying. Well, when the Virgin appeared to the uncle and healed him, she said, I am Guadalupe, which sounds to us like Guadalupe. But Guadalupe in their language meant she who crushes the head of the serpent. And the serpent god is to whom they were sacrificing their children. At the same time, this Guadalupe sounded to the Franciscans like Guadalupe, which is Arabic for the word Wolf River, which was a reference to a shrine that they had back in Spain when the Saint Luke, the apostle, had made a statue of Our Lady, and that land was taken over by the Muslims and buried. And so this reference of Guadalupe, this statue or this shrine at Wolf River. So it was a message to the Spanish. It was a message to the Aztecs. Also, for us, it's very relevant. So I mentioned this Arabic allusion. There's also Our Lady standing on the crescent moon, which is a symbol of Islam. When I mentioned also Don John of Austria took this image, used it as a banner against the Saracens, the Muslim armies in the Battle of Lepanto. There's ties to that because Pope Pius V said that this is Our Lady of Victory, and then later that was turned into Our Lady of the Rosary. And we know in 1917, the Virgin Mary appeared at Fatima, which was the daughter of Muhammad. So there's so many things that we could get into, but we're going to get into quickly the relevance of the flowers all over the tilma. So some of these are magnolias. To the Aztecs, this was the heart flower, which represented the heart, which was a sign of the sacrifice that they would take out the human heart of the victims of the Aztec priests. On top of that, there is topography all over this tilma. This tilma has the topography of the volcanoes that are all around Mexico City. And now let us get into a little bit of the scientific message that is given to us today. So on December 12th, there was a certain constellation in the sky. And on her tilma, the stars are aligned from the perspective of the sun on her tilma with various messages for us today. So for example, over her heart is the constellation Virgo. Over her womb is the constellation Leo. Over her head is the corona, so the crown. So there's messages showing that this took place on a specific day. This image that was revealed to the bishop is proof is in the stars that were revealed at that time. And modern scientists have laid down chords. So if you lay the image horizontally, have put chords and matched up each star to a musical note. And when you play this, and you can look this up on YouTube and you can listen to it, it's a very heavenly sound. And if you will remember what I said Juan Diego originally heard heavenly music, and it is believed that this sound matches up with the sound that can be found in the stars of Our Lady of Guadalupe. So it's a very heavenly explanation. And more importantly, what I think is relevant for us today, two things. So there was a doctor, his last name was Castillo, so I remember his last name. I don't remember his first name because my last name is Castillo, who was measuring the tilma. He put a stethoscope to the womb of the tilma, and when he put a stethoscope there, he heard a heartbeat. In the 1980s in Mexico, when abortion became legal, they were having a mass in the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City. It was a pro-life mass. At the end of the mass, everybody there testifies that the shape of a baby in the womb, over the woman's stomach, over Our Lady's stomach, was glowing a bright light. And there's many people who snapped photographs of this. Very relevant for our pro-life message of today. The pregnant mother, almost willing to give birth. She has all the proportions of a woman who is in late term in her pregnancy. But even more importantly for today, so the eyes on the tilma.
Oh, it looks like we lost him for a second. We will get him back in just a minute. Maybe his internet cut out. I know he's talking about the eyes with regard to the catch light. 'Cause I'm a photographer, so I used to always be thinking about catch light. When you take the catch light is what you see in the image of, like, you know how you take a picture of somebody, you can see a little piece of light in their eye? That's called a catch light. And in this image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, in the catch light, you can see Juan Diego standing there and a couple other people they're assuming is the bishop. So it's almost like from her perspective, you see like this picture of what's going on. So anyway, a lot of miracles that take place. We'll get Gabe back here in just a second, and he's back. Hey, Gabe.
Sorry.
I just told him about the catch lights of Juan Diego
very
in her eyes. Because I used to be a photographer, so I know all about catch lights, and we used to like try to create things in the catch lights, and he's actually in the catch light. So from that perspective of boom, there it is. And you can't see it unless you look at it through a microscope, right? Or very, very magnified.
Okay, can you hear me clearly? I had to switch to my FaceTime camera on my computer. All right.
Oh, so sure. Yep.
Also within that same image is very important is a family. So they found that there's over 13 people in this image. So in addition to Juan Diego, in addition to the bishop, the images match the curvature of the eye. So when you look very closely at the human eye, you can see reflections. So these images of the bishop were the exact moment that Juan Diego revealed the tilma. Very important. But most importantly, I think for today, is that in the eye of the Virgin Mary is a family, a mother, a father, a baby, and another child. This is so important for us to remember that Our Lady has us, has the human family, has the family as the building block of the society in her eye. And I mentioned that my friend, Frater Giovanni, he went and everybody received something different when you go on pilgrimage. I encourage you, when you go on pilgrimage, the reason why it's so popular, especially in Mexico, the majority of the pilgrims that I saw when I was in the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe were Mexicans. They have a beautiful tradition in the Mexican culture to take petitions to Our Lady, to offer sacrifices to Our Lady. Many of them will crawl on their knees for a mile seeking petitions. I don't know what my friend Frater Giovanni was petitioning. He's a very holy person, probably was asking for a greater love of the Virgin Mary. One of the things I'm constantly asking Our Lady for is a better sense of her presence, a better ability to help me to see her. So I mentioned to you, my friend Frater Giovanni, something happened to him. He was crying. I didn't ask him the details, but he just kept repeating to me that she's alive in this image. She's alive in this image. She's alive in this image as tears are streaming down his face.
That's beautiful.
What I felt like she was saying, and I was praying, I was saying, Blessed Mother, help me to see you all the time. I want your presence with me everywhere I go. Because when we have the Virgin Mary, we have the Holy Spirit, we have Jesus Christ. And very vividly, I felt like she was putting in my soul that I see you. So just as she saw Juan Diego, I could just imagine myself in her eyes. And I had an overwhelming sense that she has her eyes on me, yes, specifically, but on every single person. If she's truly our mother, and that's what she claims to be in this apparition, she just wants to be our mother. And I will give you the messages that she wanted to give about going on pilgrimage, but I had the deep, overwhelming sense. Yeah, we all know she's always watching us, but when I went there, I was given the grace. The favor that I sought was to have a better sense of her presence. And I had a deep, deep understanding, a grace that human convincing cannot do, is that she's watching me at all times. She loves me. I'm the apple of her eye. She loves me as if I was the only child of hers, but she feels that way about every single person. And so this is what she said. This is the message, the main message of Our Lady of Guadalupe and the tilma, a message that we remind ourselves every time we look upon this scientific anomaly, which is the tilma of Guadalupe. This is what she said to Juan Diego, and this is what she says to every single one of us. Every single person who is overwhelmed with fear, with anxiety about illness, about not feeling worthy enough, this is her message to all of us. So although I am saying these words, I ask you to open your mind, open your heart, as if you are hearing these from the Virgin Mary herself. She says, "Hear me and understand well, my little son or my little daughter, that nothing should frighten you or grieve you. Let not your heart be disturbed. Do not fear sickness, nor any other anguish. Am I not here who am your mother? Are you not under my protection? Am I not your health? Are you not happily within the fold of my mantle? What else do you want? Do not grieve. Do not be disturbed by anything. Do not be afflicted by the illness of Juan's uncle, but any person in your life that's suffering. Do not be afflicted by this. Who will not die of it now, this is a very specific case, be assured that he is now cured. Climb, my dear son, to the top of the hill where you saw me and I gave you orders. You will find flowers." And then he says to cut them. So important. That is the message for all of us. Whatever the problem, whatever the conflict, our mother loves us. When something bad happens to us, bad things will happen to us, but we are not alone. Our Lady is the mediatrix of all grace. Our Lady is the spouse of the Holy Spirit, who's the consoler. Our Lady crushes the head of the serpent, is the one who brings desolation, who brings anguish. She will give us the grace we need to face our conflicts and face them courageously. Now, before we go on, I want to give you why you should go on pilgrimage to visit the tomb of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which is in Mexico City. Very important. This is why she wanted the basilica to be built. I want very much to have a temple here for me in which I will show him. You go to this temple, this is my aside, she's going to show you him. I will exalt him and make him manifest. I will give him to the people in all my personal love, in my compassion, in my help, in my protection. I am truly your merciful mother, yours and all the people who live united in this land, and all of the other people of different ancestries, my lovers whom I love, those who seek me, those who trust in me. At this basilica, she says, I will hear their weeping, their complaints, and heal all their sorrows, hardships, and sufferings. And to bring about what my compassionate and merciful concern is trying to achieve, you must go to the residence of the Bishop of Mexico and tell him that I sent you here to show him how strongly I wish for him to build me a temple here on this plain. You will report to him exactly all you have seen. This is what Our Lady wants. And it's a beautiful message because at the Protestant Reformation, besides the splitting of the church, one of the greatest fruits of that was distrust of the Virgin Mary, rejecting her and her role as our mother. Our Lady loves us, and her primary goal is to, one, console us. Because she is mother, she can't help but console her children. We all have this physiologically built into our bodies to long for the breast and for the sweetness and for the milk of a mother. We experience this from the moment we come out of our womb. But so too in the supernatural order, Our Lady cannot listen to the voice of her child without suffering. So she wants to heal us and help us. And on top of that, she wants nothing more to bring us to Jesus Christ. She's the mediatrix of all grace. She's the spouse of the Holy Spirit. She always brings us to Jesus. And this is her predominant goal, to give something to us on our pilgrimage. Yes, to hear our sorrows, because that's what a mother does, but most importantly, to help to love her son more. And that's what's going to happen. You will love Mary more. You will become more like Mary for Jesus. You will become more like Jesus for Mary. I just cannot encourage you enough. Is it difficult to go to Mexico if you're an American and you're used to a very spoiled life? A little bit, very little. When I was there, on the grounds, I never once felt unsafe. There are guards absolutely everywhere. They got their little headpieces on. They're communicating to one another. You will not be able to go anywhere on that property without the watchful eye of a security guard. That is a national treasure for them. That is federal property. You will be safe. You will be safe there. There are some obvious common things to take in mind when you're traveling to a foreign country, especially concerning what you eat, what you drink. This is going to happen wherever you travel in the world. Obviously, any major tourist site, you're going to have pickpockets and people like that you want to keep an eye on. But I give you my word, you do not have to fear that when you're in the presence of your Heavenly Mother's image in the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City. I give you my word about that. There's no doubt about that. I'm sorry, I got my camera over here. That's
okay, my friend. And I just want to assure everybody that our pilgrimage that we're going on in January 15th, we're going through Select International. It's a company that, I didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, I think I'll go to Mexico City. Let's go. We'll figure it out when we get there. We're going to have guides there. We're going to have people with us, and it's going to be 100% safe. We're going to have drivers. We're going to be that's all going to be fine. We're going to go see all these places, and I'm so excited to do this. And I just want to ask you real quick, Gabe.
Yes.
For you personally, I mean, you're a guy who is very solid in your faith. You teach people on your YouTube channel, and you're in full-time ministry. What did this do for you personally as someone who you didn't need to be convinced of Our Lady's mothership, motherhood. You didn't need to be convinced about Jesus Christ. So I suspect that all of the head knowledge about this you already had, but what did it do for you and your own personal faith to be able to be there?
One of the greatest things that holds back the hand of God from working miracles, we see in the New Testament, the majority of the time where Jesus worked a miracle, it was because somebody had extraordinary confidence that he was who he said that he was. Peter was walking on water until he lost confidence in our Lord. And so many of the saints say that fear is our biggest setback. It's our concupiscence. We don't trust God. Adam and Eve didn't trust God and his word. And so I too struggle with that. I struggle with doing God's will and trusting that his will is what's best for me. And so I went specifically, not only to make a documentary so that other people can learn about the Virgin Mary, but I went specifically for the grace, which is a grace, nobody can earn it, for the grace to be able to know or feel more securely Mary's love for me. And when on the last day, because whenever I film things, I'm like in videographer mode, and they were very strict about videography there. They didn't want any documentaries to be made. So I had to look like a photographer. So I was very much, or like just a tourist. So I was very much in that mindset. And on the last day, it was very crowded, and I put my camera away and I just prayed. And I was looking at the eyes of the Virgin Mary, and I just knew that she had, it was a supernatural gift. Because just a FYI, for my personal prayer, whenever I receive communion, besides all the prayers that we normally do, I always ask Jesus in the Holy Eucharist, help me to love your mother like you do. Help me to see her like you do. Help me to be aware of her presence. And so all at once, I was given the grace, at least to a certain degree, obviously not perfectly, I'm still struggling, to know that Mary's watching me at all times. And when somebody's watching you, that means they see you. They see your weaknesses. They see your struggles. And if they see you and they're loving and they're your mother, they're always helping you. So that was my number one desire, is to always have a sense of the presence of Mary. And I can just, and I would try to imagine her eyes before. And that was just like a holy habit that I would have. Any room I could go into, I try to imagine the eyes of the Virgin Mary. I ask her to help me to love and see what she loves and sees. But now when I look and I imagine her eyes, I imagine the eyes of the Tilma, and in her eyes, I see my reflection. So for me, the greatest gift that I got personally was I have a greater confidence that Mary sees me, that she loves me, that there's not a moment that goes by that she's not interceding for me. When things aren't going my way, it's because I am not God, and she has a better plan than I do, because I've given myself totally to her. I've consecrated myself to her. I see how much she loves everybody. She wants to wrap everybody in her mantle. She wants to be everybody's mother. And I was given a great confidence that regardless of how perverse the world seems, and the world seems very perverse, she went to a more perverse culture, a culture that was drastically more misled, where today our abortions happen behind walls. These abortions would happen in public and be lifted up, and hearts and dead bodies would be worn, and which is far worse than what we face today. And she converted the entire nation and still converts them today. Far better than any evangelization plan given by man. The bishops were failing, and they were doing the best. They were doing enculturation. They were doing accompaniment, and it was failing. And all it took was one intervention of the Virgin Mary to radically transform the most hardened of hearts, the most ruthless killers. So for me, it gave me extraordinary confidence. I don't care who the atheist is. I don't care how angry or how perverse they are. We have the answer to the longings of the human heart, which is God, but even deeper, because we have a concupiscence that involves God and a distrust and a fear of him. God has given us the great grace of a mother. And every person, no matter how perverse, no matter how broken, longs physiologically for their mother. So I am just even more convinced of her role in our life. And it was just a great blessing. If you love the Virgin Mary, you got to go to Mexico. It's super cheap. Like I said, tickets were only $350 for flights. You got to do more than just flights. But if you can't go with Keith, which I strongly encourage you to go with a pilgrimage group, especially one that's led by a man who loves the Virgin Mary. If you can't go with a pilgrimage group, go on your own. Mexico City is very safe as long as you stay out of areas that don't look unsafe, and that you eat food that's well cooked, and you drink water that's in bottles, and take Ubers, etc.
Yeah, there's all that. And yeah, I mean, I think that's important. I mean, our group that's going, we've got Father Dennis Conway. He's from our parish, and he's Spanish speaking, so he's coming, and so he's going to be able to help us with that. We're going to have guides there, and we're going to have a guided trip. So we're going to make sure. I've been on pilgrimages that are done with an organization, and I've been on pilgrimages where I've gone just kind of with some friends. And I can tell you there's a big difference.
Yes.
You need to be with somebody who knows what's going on.
Yes.
When I went to Rome, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah. I went to Mexico City without a guide. And had we not run into the parish or one of the parochial vicars at the neighboring parish, had we not run into him, we would have missed, I would say, the majority of Guadalupe, because this guy showed us where Juan Diego like literally slept outside of the first chapel. He's like, Juan Diego used to sleep right there on the floor. And then there's a miraculous spring of water that people used to get baptized over here. And then over here is where where Juan Diego would try to avoid the Virgin Mary. So without a guide, like, you're going to be lost. So yes, anybody can walk into Mexico City, go up, see the Tilma, but you're not going to know, you're going to be missing out on a lot without a guide. That's for sure.
Yeah. And you know, here's the ultimate thing. I think that this has to be a God thing for anybody, Gabe. Yeah. I mean, like for me, I hadn't really considered going there. It was on my list of places I wanted to go in my life. But it was last year, I was riding my motorcycle up to the shrine in La Crosse, Wisconsin, because we have
beautiful.
Cardinal Burke's shrine is up there. It's about 2 hours from my house. And
you live in Wisconsin?
No, I live in Iowa. I live in Northeast Iowa. But the motorcycle riding up through that area is absolutely phenomenal. And one of my best friends, who is a Protestant pastor, who we went to seminary together, 25, 30 years ago, we ride together every year. And we were going to La Crosse, and I said, "Hey, how would you feel about going to this shrine?" And he was like, "Cool, let's go." So we were riding, and I was vlogging the trip. So I had my camera on, my microphone, and I was talking about Our Lady of Guadalupe. And as we were getting up there, I remember, it's even in the video, I said, I've just decided that, I feel like I need to go there someday. That's on my bucket list. And when we got inside and we walked and we actually prayed the rosary at the Rosary Walk up there, and we went into the shrine, and they were having adoration. It was so amazing.
Yes.
And I felt like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Well, when we were getting ready to talk about doing a pilgrimage someplace, the first choice that they gave me wasn't Mexico City. And I was kind of like, okay, well, that's not going to work out for whatever reason. Right. And they said, how do you feel about going to Mexico City? And it was just like lightning hit me. It was like, yes, I need to go there. So I know for me, there's a deep personal message. And I don't know what it is, Gabe, but there's some reason why I need to go there. And I'm sure that there are people out there that there's a reason they need to go there too. And I'm not a prophet. I'm not God. And I'm not trying to manipulate somebody and say, hey, God's got a special thing for you. Yeah. So if you come with us, blah, blah, blah. But I do believe that. Yeah. I do believe that God will reveal himself to us in special ways when we do things out of obedience, even if we don't understand why. Yes. Juan Diego didn't understand why. And that's the thing. We have to remember that, like you said, Gabe, we're not God. We don't see the big picture. Right. What our job is to do, and this is a perfect example with Juan Diego, our job is to do the next thing that we were told to do. Yes. Our Lady didn't say to Juan Diego, here's what's going to happen. You're going to wrap these flowers up. You're going to go to the bishop. You're going to unfurl them. And I'm going to have a divine image that's going to blow everybody away. Yeah. Trust me, it's going to be awesome. She didn't say that. She told him, here's what I want you to do. The next step. And too often, I think we all sit back and we go, okay, I'll obey God, but I need to see a few more steps here. I know that was a big part of my conversion, was I need to understand. I need to see all the steps. But God doesn't work with us like that. He says, here's what I need to do. But here's what the other thing that I was interested about. She said this. She didn't say, look, do this or else. She said, am I not your mother? Her appeal to us is not an appeal of intellectual knowledge or of coercion with threats. Right. It is a relational appeal. It's a relational invitation to say, am I not your mother? That's not, am I not your mother? You better do or else. It's, hey, you can trust me. Why? Because I love you. As you've been saying so eloquently here today, she loves us. So whatever she invites us into is a loving relationship. And who doesn't need that in this world? Right. I know I do, Gabe. Right. I know I do. So I hope that you guys will consider going. And is there anything else you'd like to share with us about that?
I would testify. Like, one thing that struck me was how many miracles were attributed to Our Lady of Guadalupe. So there's a museum, and the entryway of the museum, the hall is lined It's lined with all these votives, so little offerings of favors answered. And there's pictures. So I'm sure there's many miracles that have not been, written down, but the whole wall is lined of little pictures that depict like the hundreds of thousands of miracles. I remember seeing one of a man being hit by a bus, and then there's like a picture of Our Lady of Guadalupe. There's a woman praying for her child, and Our Lady of Guadalupe, there's an image of her in the hospital. We should not doubt that Our Lady will do or could intercede for us to do great, great miracles. So ask great, great things of her, and prepare yourself for this pilgrimage by praying the rosary, making it a very spiritual experience. I give you my word, you're not going to leave disappointed. You're going to have an incredible, life-changing experience. John Paul II went there 5 times. So you'll go.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he went there 5 times.
Wow. Well, Gabe, listen, I could talk to you about this stuff for hours, and I hope we get to do that again sometime.
We'll meet up again.
I just want to thank you for your passion, for your ministry, and also I want to thank you again personally for responding to my request to talk. I'm sure, anytime. I know I was a youth pastor for many years. I get that. There's never an end to the demands and to the requests. So I just personally thank you from the bottom of my heart for agreeing to talk with me.
Well, thank you.
Awesome,
anytime,
my friend.
Anytime, my friend. God bless you, brother.
All right. Before you go, hey, listen.
Yes.
Tell people where they can find out more about you and check out your ministry.
Yes, please. So,
and where are we going to see this documentary? I want to know about that too.
Yeah. So the documentary, God willing, will be done in about a month. So my YouTube channel is Gabi, Gabi, After Hours. I know that's a strange thing, but I made it during the early days of YouTube when nobody had their name as a YouTube channel. So Gabi After Hours. The documentary is going to be very well produced. God willing, you will get a sense of what it's like to go to Mexico. My friend Frater Giovanni does a great job of summarizing all of what we talked about today in a more eloquent manner with the visuals and with this and that. And you can see the hill and you can see what the church looks like. And we got some great shots of the Tilma. So Gabi After Hours is the YouTube channel. I'd appreciate you subscribing there. If you enjoyed this, make sure you subscribe to Keith. A lot of times, especially older people, they'll come across a video on YouTube and it's like, I like that. Hit subscribe if you like that. Get a Google account because you might not ever see it again if you don't subscribe. All right. There we go.
Great point. And by the way, I do that all the time too.
Yeah.
I'm like,
subscribe
I love this. Why don't I see that ever in my feed? Oh, wait. Did I subscribe?
Yeah.
And then you got to hit the little notification bell, set it to all. So do all the things, my friends.
Yes, please.
And you will be blessed. Well, thank you so much, everybody. If you're looking for information about this pilgrimage, in the description, there's going to be a link. Take that, follow that link, and get signed up. Go ahead, Gabe.
Yeah, one last thing. A lot of this information I got from the book, and Frater Giovanni got from the book called Guadalupe Mysteries, Deciphering the Code. It is by Ignatius Press. So this is a great resource. If you're going to visit the Tomb of Our Lady of Guadalupe, grab this book, read it on the airplane. You'll love it.
Thank you so much. And I will link to that as well. And I'm going to order that book today.
It's a great resource.
Awesome. Well, everyone, please make sure you click the link in the description to Gabe's YouTube channel, to all of the things, and then, of course, the link to get signed up for the pilgrimage. All right, my friends, take care, and God bless. Thanks for listening to Catholic Feedback with Keith Nestor. Send in your questions and comments to feedback@catholicfeedback.com. This podcast is brought to you by Stewardship, a mission of faith, and is also supported by our team at patreon.com/Keith Nestor. Please consider joining our support team. Catholic Feedback is a production of Down to Earth Ministries. For more information about Down to Earth or to bring me to your parish or event, visit down2earthministry.org. See you next time.